Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader. This is my comic book countdown for the week. I'm going to be looking at the 10 comic books I read from New Comic Book Day this past Wednesday, ranking them, counting them down from number 10 to number 1 in my, ranking them in terms of my pleasure in reading them, and giving you a few of my thoughts along the way. That I'm not talking, this is not a video about the Spirit, but I did get a nice present in the mail this past week from George of Meanwhile at the Podcast. He sent me, I'll show you the main thing he sent me in a moment. He sent me a whole bunch of business cards from Meanwhile at the Podcast and some coasters from Meanwhile at the Podcast. There's Kristen, George, and Rodney, the three co-hosts of the show. But George is the one I have a lot of contact with. I've been on his show a couple times. I've had him on here a couple of times, and we chat all the time on Twitter. And also, I guess these are stickers. I'm well stocked up on supplies. I guess I could go around the neighborhood promoting Meanwhile at the Podcast. And then my favorite thing, he sent 2 refrigerator magnets. And I don't know why I love refrigerator magnets, and this is a really nice looking one. So, and then he sent me the first issue of the Matt Wagner Spirit series that was done over at Dynamite, because he knows what a big fan I am of Will Eisner's The Spirit. And a little card with a note in it that I think I'll just keep to myself. And then a what they call an artisan edition of Wally Wood's EC stories, which is incredible. I drool over this as I look through it. Unlike a hardback, unfortunately, it does bend in there, but this makes it a much more affordable way. I don't know if they have a hardback edition of this, but this makes it a much affordable way for still a very expensive book, but a much more affordable way to take in some classic Wally Wood's artwork. It's kind of big, so it's hard to show on camera here. But I love it, and I'm deeply appreciative to George for sending it to me. Look, and I especially love Wally Wood's sci-fi, which is a large part of what they show here. And he just brings an intensity that's hard to really describe, and that is uniquely his own. Other artists have kind of attempted to capture it to lesser and greater degrees of success, but nothing beats the original Wally Wood. So I'm going to be savoring this over and over again. So big thank you to George. There's Wally Wood's self-portrait on the back. So on to the week's comics. In at number 10 was The Undiscovered Country. This one, I keep thinking, am I really not enjoying this? I should be enjoying this more, but I'm just not. I'm okay with it. I have to say, I enjoyed all the comics I got this week. All 10 of them were worth my while personally to read. Taking a sip there. This cover's not bad. It's kind of neat, but I find the art particularly uninspiring. It's workmanlike, but maybe I just have high expectations for Image Comics, and I'm spoiled. And even the colors, which are by one of the people I consider one of the top colorists that I know of, Matt Wilson, they just don't do much for me in this particular comic. And beyond that, the writing is good, but I'm somehow not. I'm not buying into the story enough. I'm not believing this future America the way I should. And I know that there's some kind of science fictional explanation for all the stuff that seems almost like magic. But I'm not as impressed as I should be. I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it. There's a lot of creativity gone into this, and this is just comic doesn't click as well as it should. And maybe part of the problem is the artist, and part of the problem is two writers together, Snyder and Soule. Maybe two writers is less good than one writer. in this case. Either one of these writers are excellent writers. Anyway, still a good comic. In at number 9, and I've given this comic Engine Word a lot of leeway. This is issue 3. I haven't gotten a lot out of issues 1 and 2. Love the covers. And this one is no exception. Great cover. And I heard someone else say, and it makes sense, that these covers are, each one is a portrait of one of the 12 sort of zodiac sign-like, godlike beings. We still don't know exactly what they are or who they are, who seem to rule over the human colonists on this planet, who don't know much about their past. But these people perhaps are immortals who kept the technology power for themselves and made themselves like gods, I guess. We just don't have a very clear picture of this society, but it is growing more interesting. And there's a lot of elements in it that I find kind of cool. And either the artwork's getting a little better or I'm getting used to it. But so I love this talking head of what they think of as a golem. There's apparently a bunch of artificial type of creatures here left over from the technology of old Earth, I assume. So I assume that a bunch of colonists from Earth came to this planet, crash landed. Some 12 of them managed to keep all the technology and goodies for themselves, and everyone else kind of lives off the scraps. But it's just not, it's low in my rank here because it's not clearly portrayed. Here's a kind of cool page, double page spread, which I guess my current setup doesn't allow you to see that well. But anyway, nice colors. This comic is a good example of one that's held up a lot by the colorist. So I'm just growing in my enjoyment of it, although I recognize the flaws. But it's definitely a kind of science fiction story that is up my alley in terms of what it's about. In at number 8 is Hidden Society, which, under different circumstances might be way higher up on my list of enjoyment. The problem is the last issue of this came out in March, and what is it now? September. So we're talking 5 or more months ago. And I don't remember. I remember really liking the first 2 issues, and I guess I have to go dig them up. At this point, after reading the end of this issue, it says concluding next issue. So I guess maybe when I get issue 4, if I have the time, I'll scrounge through my boxes and find the other issues. But I also worry that with it just being 4 issues, they're not really going to, at the pace of the story, they're not going to really flesh out a whole lot more. The art and color is fantastic. Raphael Albuquerque does the art and Marcelo Costa the color. The script is by Raphael Scavone, and it's a good script. But like I say, I've just both lost the thread and feel like they're going to need more than 4 issues to really, at least since I can't remember what the story is, I suppose I could be wrong, but to really flesh out this world and its magical system and all of that. So it's one that I, despite loving the first 2 issues, I'm just not sure whether it's a good story or not anymore. But I enjoyed looking at the pretty art, and it was a nice, little chapter in some story that's about a battle between 2 different magical groups that live within our world. So we'll see. I love that cover, and it says after Rockwell, and I looked for Norman Rockwell pictures of families in cars, and there was one, but it doesn't look exactly like this, so it's very loosely after Norman Rockwell. But in any case, this might be my favorite cover of the week. In at number 7 is Savage Dragon. And this is a pretty fun, unique issue. Savage Dragon salutes the funnies. So every page is like a color comic strip in your newspaper. We got piglets instead of peanuts. And each one of these they don't really stand alone, and each one is a little snippet from bits and pieces of what's going on with our current cast of characters. Some just for a joke, and some maybe progressing the story a little bit. This is not for kids, so this is one of the things that worries me about Savage Dragon. It looks like a kid's comic, and here it looks even more like a kid's comic. But there's all kinds of pretty raw sexual content. Not visually in this issue, but definitely in what they're talking about. But for me, other than that, it was a lot of fun seeing these different takes on different comic strips. And so I really enjoyed it. Oh, I had a bit of an interruption there. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun just seeing a different take on these things. I know I can vaguely remember reading the comic strip with this character, but I can't remember the name of that comic strip anymore. It's been a long time since I've had newspapers with comic strips in them. Of course, I mean, I think Calvin and Hobbes is a big influence on Eric Larson in some fashion, and so, of course, there was some Calvin and Hobbes here. But yeah, but a good example of why this is not for kids is this last thing. Now I'm awake and engorged. Go to sleep, pork roast. Okay. And then there was this backup story, which I then realized I have not read the backup story last issue, so I need to go back because this is part 2 of the Etherian. Looks kind of good, actually, but and I'm not quite sure if it connects to Savage Dragon or not. I'm definitely thinking about whether I want to keep up with Savage Dragon or drop it. I've had a good run with it. I've been enjoying it, but lately I've been enjoying it less, and maybe it's just time to take a break from it. It's just a series that's going to go on forever, but I don't have to read it forever. In at number 6 is Juggernaut. I was real excited for this issue because I love the character Juggernaut, or think I do, and I love Ron Garney's art. He's definitely one of the very top artists for me at Marvel right now, maybe along with Joe Bennett from The Hulk. And maybe I think I like him even better than Joe Bennett, but I love Joe Bennett. And the art did not disappoint, except maybe I felt like at times the colorist did not, given how strong a black and white artist he is, sometimes the colorist effects covered up the art, like in these pictures, in a way that I didn't think suited the art at its best. But that may be just my personal taste. I love the inky look, and other people may really appreciate the color special effects on top of the art. When he did Conan, they released a black and white trade, and I loved that, just seeing his art in pure black and white. So this one showed that I am just not up on what's up with the X-Men. I want my Juggernaut as the unstoppable brute of a villain, and this is a more sensitive Juggernaut. And I just don't know a lot about that. So it was a perfectly fine, good comic. I think it was just my expectations and my lack of knowledge about Juggernaut that, kept it from being like a top 3 comic for me. But like I said, I liked all the comics here. This one came into the middle of the pack in terms of my enjoyment. But it's definitely one I'm gonna, as the series continues, I'm gonna keep going back and just savoring the art. There's another one of those effects, which to me I know it must fit with this kid's superpowers. It's kind of a nice story where Juggernaut's taking this superpowered kid under his wing, basically. But that's just not kind of the overpowered, crazy supervillain Juggernaut that I think of in my ignorance of current Marvel storylines. Yeah, you can see the color just wasn't quite right for the art for me. For my own need to just really enjoy the choices, the ink choices of Ron Garney, and how he he chooses sort of light and shadow, and shows lines in some places and doesn't show lines in other places. It's the art of what you do and don't put down on the page, basically. And then the color kind of interferes with that. But not to the point where I couldn't enjoy the art. I mean, I definitely enjoyed this comic quite a lot. And speaking of the Hulk, in at number 5 was this Maestro book. Again, because there are gaps in my Marvel knowledge. I know Maestro goes back quite a bit to some earlier Peter David run, of which I've only read parts of and only remember it spottily also. I just don't remember who the Maestro is, and I think we're getting an origin story. He's not really the Maestro yet. He doesn't look like he does on the cover in the rest of this. That is a really cool cover. By the way, I'm sorry. I'm horrible that Chadwick Boseman died young. Talented actor. Rest in power, Chadwick Boseman. Though on the covers of all these comics, I don't think it's not a good look. I don't know. Maybe if they'd put a little circle down here or something, in terms of pushing all the covers down, it's just not working for me. But anyway, this comic is a great read. Cool artwork. This is the kind of artist who does sort of work with the modern coloring very well. I wonder if he does his own coloring. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's see. Where's the credits? No. Jesus Abertoff is the color artist. Well, they work very well together. Anyway, it was a very cool story, a cool vision of this alternative Earth future. And Peter David this is Peter David in good form, which he usually is. And I just really enjoyed the progress of this story, and I'm enjoying this series. And I don't know how long it's supposed to be, 4 issues or 6 issues. I'm now hoping for 6 issues. I'm hoping it's a little chunkier. But yeah, lots of cool stuff. And that's about it for this. Just looking forward to the next issue. As I talk about it, I'm thinking maybe I should have ranked Maestro even higher. But I put at number 4, The Goddamned. And a lot of that was because of the art and color here is really wonderful to look at. Now, this is also an ink-heavy line artist. Not quite as heavy as Ron Garney, but the colorist found a way to work with it better, I think. Not meaning to make this video all about colorists. And I don't love every page, like maybe we could have seen more clearly some of that stuff. And it's a very intense story. I don't buy into it that much. And I'm sure other people think it's great that we have a lot of people using the F word and everything. And I don't mean to constantly sound like I'm a person against the use of the F word, but I kind of feel like right now there's a fuck generation who just thinks the F word's just the coolest thing and makes things seem more legit and everything. And to me, given this is in ancient times between 2 different books in the Bible, I suppose, I would have liked some more creative way to show the characters' anger and nastiness than the constant use of that word. It just doesn't work for me. But other than that, I thought it was a really cool story, very intense. It's not really that deep, really. It's 2 girls who escape from these evil people who claim to work for God, and maybe in the context of this story they do work with angels at least, although the angels seem like monsters. And maybe that serpent that showed up was the devil, I don't know, but I was pretty convinced that they should join his side given the way things have been set up. But so yeah, a beautiful read. I'm not deeply invested in this, but I still really enjoy reading it when I'm reading it. Probably not deeply invested in my number 3 choice, but for some reason I really clicked with Rye this week. I mean, I like I like the storyline that we've had all along of kind of a road trip through this uh, apocalyptic future, kind of a nanobot, nano computer AI software apocalypse, I guess, that we had going on here. And our hero and his sidekick are slowly trying to. I didn't have that. Our hero, Rai, and our sidekick, Ryun or Raijun, um, working their way around the country trying to find the leftover bits of this evil AI and remove it. But as we go along, we get kind of an expanding view of all the different problems and difficulties of this world, which has been quite cool. And it seems to be getting quite a bit richer with this issue, adding in another character that I hope they'll keep around for a while. I wasn't a fan of this page here with all the dialogue, but in general, I'm loving the art. It's kind of a weird combination of color and line art. I think the artist worked in a lot of grayscale, and then the colorist went back over it. So it has that kind of what do you call it? Uncanny valley feel a little bit of, oh, that's not quite a painting, but it kind of looks like a painting. But despite calling it that uncanny valley, I kind of enjoy it quite a bit. My edition came with some background stuff, so you can see there what the grayscale artwork looks like, that the artist does before the colorist gets on top of it. And I think the colorist removes all of the black in often cases and just uses I don't think those outlines are in black. They might be in brown or something, or gray. But you can see really cool art, and to me, a fun story. Someone said it was hard to follow what was going on, but I haven't had that problem. And I'm being a spoilerific there. So I won't say who comes back in the next issue in case you didn't see that image. Funny cover. An interesting thing about this cover is it says it's by Don Perlin. I wonder if it's an old sketch of Don Perlin, but it is of these characters sort of in their current situation. Don Perlin if he's still alive, must be quite an elderly man. And a lot of it maybe is how nicely this Don Perlin cover is colored. But I really like that cover. It's the cover to the pre-order edition. I committed to getting all 12 issues of this, and so I get a special pre-order version, which has these extras in the middle. In at number 2, for me, my second most favorite read of the week was this Justice League Dark. Great writing, fun characters, incredibly good art. Here's the artist who I, previous to the last issue, had never heard of. MNK Nahulapan. MNK Nahulapan? I don't know. And I don't know what kind of name that is, from what part of the world he might come. But he does an awesome job. And I should also look at who June Chung is the colorist, and she also does. This is not so in focus, is it? Let's see. There we go. But so it's just a pleasure to look at, and it is really a fun story. I'd say the only sort of flaw, if you will, of Justice League Dark is it's kind of a never-ending story with elements that just keep getting mixed and remixed, and it's fun reading on a monthly basis. If I tried to read it all together, it might seem kind of repetitive. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing it would have a sense of kind of recursion and repetitiveness. So I'm not sure it would be a good thing to get in an omnibus and sit down and read all in one day. If you did get it in trades, I would say read it slowly. I think we're coming to the end because I've read that this book is going to be canceled. I'm not sure on which issue it's planned to be canceled, but you can feel the writer Ram V bringing elements together for what could potentially be the end. Now, there have been other ends, sort of, so to speak, with these characters, and then the story picks up and keeps continuing. So it could also come back if for some reason they decided not to cancel it. I don't think that's going to happen, but I've really been loving it. I think of the rebirth era, I guess, that we're still in for DC. This Justice League Dark has been consistently one of my favorite books. So I'm guessing when I look back at it all, it may come out as one of my top DC books of, the last 3 or 4 years. Then coming in at number 1, proving I'm not always such an indie guy, as my number 2 and number 1 were DC and Marvel. The Immortal She-Hulk, more Chadwick Boseman sort of sitting on top of the cover. This is not... I love Joe Bennett's artwork. I have actually bought some of his original art, but this is not a good cover. I don't know what went wrong here. Maybe it looked good in black and white and then they colored it. I don't know. I feel like it's some sketch that Joe Bennett should have just thrown away. But anyhow, the interior art is very good, and the interior story is very good, and it connects up to the whole Immortal Hulk themes. I think you can continue reading Immortal Hulk without it, but I think it enriches the whole sense of the Green Door and the world beyond death, and its connection to the people who are gamma irradiated, the sort of Hulk family of heroes and villains. And it does a really good job of connecting all that together. So, yeah, and I think it's just a one-shot. And I don't know if it ties in also with some kind of event going on at Marvel, but it mostly feels like it just ties in with the Immortal Hulk storylines. And yeah, I'm really glad I got it. I think it was... Oh, you know what? What I'm missing here, an 11th comic that would have, I don't know where I put it, would have come in pretty low on the list, was Neil Adams and Mark Waid's current Fantastic Four miniseries. That one was $4.99 for only 20 pages. This one's $4.99 for about 30 pages. But anyway, so I didn't mind paying the extra money for this because it was a very good story. So there you have it, my top 10 for this week. Thanks for joining me. Thanks again to the handsome people at Meanwhile at the Podcast. They need to make a t-shirt of this. They have a t-shirt of just the logo, but I think this is fantastic with these kind of iconic looks at the 3 hosts. So thank you, everybody, and I'll be back soon.